Welcome to Bunnyfish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as Bunnyfish on Ravelry, Instagram, and YouTube. Today is Monday, the 8th of June, 2015. This is episode 132, Letterboxing. Grab some sticks and string and come sit with me. Did you have a good week? I had a good week. The last week was the first official week of summer break, right? Was it only a week? Because I feel like Gabriel's been out of school forever. Not in a bad way, it's just we were constantly going last week, constantly. We went to 3 different parks, all on different days. We went to the library, we went to the zoo, and I think that that is the pace we're going to be going at this summer. Just always moving, always going, because when we're stuck here, the kids get on my nerves and I get on their nerves, like stuck in the house. For, a day every once in a while is fine, but we can walk to the park here. We can walk to the library. There's a lot of things in walking distance and then, drive to the zoo and stuff. So I think it's going to be a summer of go, 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 which is fine. It'll be okay. We had a almost misadventure on Sunday. We went to, which was yesterday. Oh my gosh, I feel so far away. No, Saturday. Okay, it was so far away. It was on Saturday. We went to a park and played on the playground equipment, but Gabriel really wanted to catch a crawdad because a few times ago when we went to that particular park, a huge family had gone down to the river and caught one, and Gabriel has been obsessed with catching a lobster. Well, last time we were there, we tried, and he couldn't find any because he doesn't know where to look. And I don't really like getting in rivers and stuff. Like, I don't like taking off my shoes and getting my feet all slimy on the rocks. You know how river rocks are. I don't like it. I don't like it. Not all rivers have slimy rocks, but this one, the rocks were slimy, and it grosses me out. So Steve ended up going to the park with us, and they've got a crawfish, and Gabriel was super excited, and there were some tadpoles that they tried to catch, but they were too fast. And then they released the crawfish because we don't need that at our house. What would we do with it? It would just die in a jar, and that would be sad. So we released it, and then a couple of minutes after that, Steve was like, everybody out of the water. I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? And he was like, just get out of the water. And Mara was taking forever because she always does. And instead of going over to grab her, Steve was just standing there saying, Mara, get out of the water. That's not helpful. So I went over and I leaned over the water and grabbed her out. And I was like, what's wrong? He was like, look, in the river, because both kids were out of the water by then. I was like, where? It's not like the river's a tiny thing. It's not a huge river. It's like a stream. It's not really a river. It's 10, 15 feet wide and, anywhere from a few inches deep to a foot deep in the stretch that we stand by. And he was like, look, it's a water moccasin. And I was like, that's lovely. Well, I guess we won't be getting any crayfish from here anymore. So, and I realized that I just pronounced that fish thing 3 different ways. But in Michigan, it's pronounced all 3 ways depending on where you are. So, yeah. All 3 of those pronunciations are correct around where I'm from. Like, in a 15-mile radius, all 3 of those are used. Anyway, so that was exciting and not in a good way. But nobody was bitten and everybody was fine. We just know that we can't go play in that water anymore this summer. All the small things. That knit along is going on, and I believe it's going well, but I didn't get on Ravelry pretty much at all this week. No, I don't think I did, because we've been running. Sorry about that. I know that there are some posts that I need to respond to, and obviously all the small things, I need to write that list down. So sorry that I haven't gotten there, but I will, I promise. Works in progress. I continued working on the Delancey cardigan. So it is kind of difficult to show right this minute because I am working the sleeves 2 at a time, mostly so that I only have to count once, and if I make mistakes, I make them in the correct spot. So here are the sleeves. So this is where I was last week. I just needed to finish this front panel. So I finished the front panel. I did both sleeve caps, which are short row sleeve cap thingies. And oh, you seam the shoulders. And this is my first time mattress stitching, and it's not perfect, but it's not horrible either, so I'm okay with it. And now I am working sleeves. I'm using size 9 needles, which are 5.5 millimeters, and Knit Picks full circle yarn in denim and query. I'm getting a little nervous about my yarn because I got this yarn from Josh. He sent it to me specifically so I can make the sweater while all of my friends are making the sweater also. And this is what I have left for sleeves, the bottom band, and the collar. So 2 partial skeins of the main color and partial skein of the contrast color. Worst case scenario, I will cut out part of the collar instructions, so it might not be a shawl collar. We'll see. I'm not worried about winging it. That doesn't bother me. I don't freak out at the idea of having to do that, but I'm just a little worried about my yardage requirements for the sleeves. For the rest of the sweater, really. I mean, button band and collar, they seem so small, but they eat up more yarn than I think that I realize. But the sweater's going slowly because it's now, okay, the sweater is pretty cool in its construction, and on the body there are increases and decreases to keep it interesting, and then of course there's the striping, which keeps it interesting. So at least the sleeves also have the striping, but they're not worked on the bias at all, so it's just stockinette forever. It's basically like making 2 at a time socks that are just stockinette forever. I don't like it. That's why I don't make stockinette socks, because that would be so boring for me. I also cast on, speaking of 2 at a time socks, cast on a pair. These are the socks that I was talking about casting on last week for Josh. The pattern is Expanding Community by Megan Williams. The yarn is Peyton's Croy Socks Rag Shades in the blue brown marl colorway. And I think that you can see all 4 colors that are going to happen in this ball. You know how it is. Today is overcast, which means that all of my colors are super blown out. So there's this brown, a tannish brown, and then a gray, and also a blue. The socks kind of match, but don't match. The colors, I think, are going in the opposite. Oh yeah, the colors are going in the opposite order. And I wanted the stripes to line up, but I wasn't worried about the colors lining up because I only have 2 50-gram balls of this, and the yardage is, I think with the 2 balls together, it's about 320 yards. To make a decent pair of socks for a guy, can be cutting it close with that yardage. So I didn't want to have to cut a lot to get them to match up. And, you know, if Josh doesn't like it, he's a knitter. He can knit his own matching self-striping socks, which he does occasionally. But he doesn't have any Peyton's socks, which I think is very sad for him. I highly recommend using Peyton's Croy yarn if you want to make really hard-wearing socks. They are very hard wearing. I used them for Steve's first pair of socks, which are still going super strong, and they're his favorite pair. They're the pair that he wears most frequently, and there's no sign even of any holes forming. Obviously, support indie dyers, buy indie dyed, but if you're looking for hard wearing socks for somebody who might not necessarily take care of them as well as they should, Peyton's Croy sock is lovely. Oh, when the children interrupted, I forgot to tell you, Gabriel lost another tooth. And I feel this is very strange because don't children lose the center two top teeth first? He's already lost his center two bottom teeth. That happened at the beginning of the school year. But he lost this one. Yeah. Right next to the center two teeth, not the center teeth. That's strange, right? Yeah. He told me a few days ago that it was loose, and I was like, that doesn't seem right, but it fell out, and the tooth fairy flew a paper plane dollar bill into the room for him, and it landed on his bed. He was very excited about it. Very cool that the tooth fairy can fold paper planes. Anyway, I picked up a project that I haven't worked on in a while and made a tiny bit of progress. So here is the ad hoc mystery knit along design, which is no longer a mystery because all of the clues have been released, and this is where I was. So this is the part that I had knit. So I just did this little chunk right here, and honestly I did that because I was working on my fourth work in progress, which I'll show you in a minute, and I need breaks every once in a while. I'm not very good at working on one project for a very, very long time. So I had been working on the Delancey in between, and I was sitting here watching a podcast, but the Delancey was in my bedroom and I was lazy, and this was right here. So I was like, well, I guess I'll work on the shawl, which I love. I think it's beautiful. The finished object is very, very nice. I really like my color choices. So I don't know why I'm not working on it. Did I say this was a pattern by Josh Ricks? I can't remember. Anyway, the yarn that I'm using is Premier Serenity Sock in the black colorway, and this right here is the gray, it's the charcoal, but I over dyed it with leftover Easter egg dye, so it's a little bit tonal. And then the green is Stroll Tonal in Canopy. And I'm working mine on a US size 4, which is 3.5 millimeters. The pattern calls for a 5, I believe, but I wanted mine to be a little more dense, and I have less yardage for both of my contrast colors than is called for in the pattern. So I decided to go down to needle size just to make it that much less likely that I'll run out. If I run out, I'll wing it or something. I don't know. Because whatever. But I just wanted to make the chance of that a little bit less. So this is how it's coming. It'll get there eventually. Hopefully this month. That's the goal. So what has taken most of my knitting time this week? A new project that the pattern was just released this morning, last night. I am not 100% sure. It is called Demon Enough for Her by Lisa Tomko. And this is a sample that I'm knitting for Lisa. The way that the shawl is constructed, it's a semi-circular shawl, half circle. Is that what that's called? I don't know. One of those things. But you do the border first. So here is my border, and I am almost finished with the border. I have 2 repeats left of the pattern, I believe, and then I will be able to start on the body. So I would say that this would be a really good first lace project because it's pretty simple. Not bad simple, just the pattern is pretty intuitive. It's not too complicated. So this is what it looks like, kind of, if I can, Lace is tricky because you need to block it for it to look really, really lovely. So it looks kind of like that. And when it's on the shawl, this motif kind of looks like hearts a little bit, which is nice, but it's not in your face hearts. The pattern is well written. The chart is very clear. And it's not a very long chart. Each pattern repeat is not very long. So it works up really quickly. It works up, I could have been finished with this shawl days ago, except I kept making mistakes. Not the pattern's fault. The pattern is very clearly written. I still have to look at the pattern to do the repeats, but mostly I think I'm using it as a security blanket, not because I actually need it. The first problem I had was I picked up the shawl to work on, and I'm not sure what happened. Maybe I thought that I had done a purl back row and I hadn't, or also easy lace project because it's lace on one side, basically. There's a yarn over on the wrong side, but it's one, so it's not crazy. So I picked up the pattern and I must have thought that I did the purl back row and didn't actually do the purl back row because I knit 2 full pattern repeats with the wrong side facing the right side. How does that even happen? So I ripped that out. And then I started working again and set down the shawl after the first quarter of the pattern repeat and picked it up and did the last quarter of the pattern repeat, totally missing the 2 quarters right in the middle. And that one was much more devastating because I did 4 pattern repeats after messing up that pattern repeat. So that was a lot more ripping out. So that was 6 pattern repeats that I had to rip out, which means I would be through the 2 pattern repeats I need right now. And the rest of the shawl is, I think the rest of the shawl is just garter stitch. So yeah, I'd be basically finished because I also wouldn't have put the project in timeout. So yeah, I would have been finished by now had I not made those mistakes. What about the yarn? Do you want to know about the yarn? This super lovely, glowing in the weird stormy light color is 716 knit in the Solo 2 base, colorway Little Miss Stable. Can you see that? I'm sorry, I have a cat in my lap and he will not let me move. So 716 knit, and you know I love Jenna's stuff. And this color, even though it's orange, and if you've watched this podcast, you know how I feel about orange. Even though it's orange, it is very lovely. It's kind of tonally. I don't know if you're going to be able to see those colors because of the funky lighting, but in here there are flecks of reddish, not red, but like red orange and yellow orange and pale orange and bright orange and all sorts of oranges make up this. So it's not flat at all. It's very lovely. And I can tell you that if you want a single base yarn, so this only has 1 ply. You see that? There's no second ply around that. If you want a single ply yarn that can hold up to repeated frogging, this is it, because both times I frogged the yarn was at the same spot. That section of the yarn was frogged fully twice, Plus, I'm sure sections in there were tinked a couple times because I get distracted and then I forget what row I'm on, so I repeat the row or I skip a row or yeah. It doesn't take a ton of concentration, but it took a little more than I had at some points this week. But I really like the pattern. Oh, and if you are interested in knitting Lisa's patterns, which why wouldn't you be? She has a coupon code going on for, I believe, 50% off, but you'll have to check out her her Ravelry group for that. I'm going to cast on those other two projects probably today. The other two projects that I have for the month, Mara's tube socks and the zipper lexicon sock. Maybe I won't cast that on because I want to pack my ZK bag, like start packing that so that I can figure out what fits and what doesn't and rearrange things and all the things that you do when you're crazy and packing to go somewhere. So that will probably happen, and I don't know if I'll have them for the podcast next week or if I'll just have pictures of them. Who knows? Because the ZK is soon, and I am super excited and counting the days because I need vacation. Speaking of, this week is going to be rough. I'm already rough because the guy who normally runs UScan for 5 days out of the week is on vacation this week. So I am taking his shift, which means I am working extra late all 5 shifts this week, which is nice for the paycheck, which will come right before the ZK, but less nice for the knitting time and sleeping time. So yeah, if I seem a little crazy today, that is why, because I am severely sleep deprived. Yay! I made square number 26. This is using 716 knit Care Bear with bangs. I made a pair of Mystic Spiral socks for my sister using this yarn. And I love this colorway. I don't feel the urge to buy the same yarn, like the same exact yarn, almost ever, but I would not be sad if I got another skein of Care Bear with bangs. I just love this color so much. It's got this neon rainbowish stripe. It has blue, yellow, and pink, and then green where the blue and yellow meet up, and orange where the pink and yellow meet up. The blue and pink don't meet up, so there is no purple. But I don't have a problem with that. I love the green that pops up. Maybe I can get that on the screen. Can you see it? No, probably not. It's like right here, right under that pink. I think you can see it. That is my favorite color in the colorway, is that green. That's just there for, I don't know, 7 stitches. My Barn Raising squares are knit on, thank you, US size 2 2.75 millimeter needles, and I am using a free pattern, which is linked in the show notes and on my project page. I also, this square is half a round smaller than all of my other squares because I changed over. I didn't want to go back into this colorful stripe on the outside, and I got almost halfway through the last round, and the you might be able to see right here where I wove in the end. Yeah, that's starting to turn a little bit blue again. So I changed over to the black, and then I forgot that I changed at the halfway point. So when I got back around, or when I got through that needle, I just started as if it were the last round. It was not. It was still the second half. Oh well, it won't matter in the grand scheme of the blanket. So that's that square, and I love this yarn. So glad that I had the scrap left over to put in the blanket that I'm keeping for me, because this blanket's for me. Mara has the miter squares. She's claimed it, and Gabriel is getting the beekeeper's quilt, but this one is for me, and I love this square so much. I didn't make any hexapuffs this week. It's just, I think that hexapuffs will happen a lot more after the ZK or even at the ZK, but I have 4 projects sitting on my desk right now that I really want finished by the ZK, and the ZK is super close. So I don't have a lot of knitting time for not ZK knitting. Okay, I am reading a lot of things. Before I get into that, I will give a podcast recommendation. I watched all 8 episodes of the Love Sock Wool podcast with Sarah, and she is so cute. She's from Minnesota, and people from Minnesota just seem to be universally adorable. So she's no exception. She knits socks like a crazy person. I say that with love because I love socks, but she has or had 17 first sock projects. Or no, she had 17 socks that were on the needles, which were either the first socks or the second socks. And she did not include in that work in progress count any first socks that were finished but didn't have the second sock cast on. That's a lot. That's why I don't buy needles for socks, because I feel like I would have that many pairs of socks cast on. So I only have a few sets of sock needles, so I don't have that many going at once. Not that there's anything wrong with having that many, it's just that's a lot. Okay, on to what I'm reading, which is a lot of things. I finished reading Never Lend a Book You Love to Someone You Only Like by Garrett M. Carlson. This is the book that I won from the Podiversary, I think, for Sort of a Knitter, Josh Ricks. And this is the signed copy with the note. Very exciting. So I am okay. This book, recommend it. I recommend this book, maybe not to be read all at once, because I didn't have any books from the library, and I have another book from Josh that I'm supposed to read, but I haven't yet. So I was like, well, maybe, but I didn't really want to pick it up. It just didn't feel right, the right time for that book. So I basically had this book to read. That's silly because I have a bajillion books on my bookshelf downstairs that I have never read, that I picked up or was given and want to read eventually, but have never read. Silly. So I started reading this one, and it's a collection of essays, which I enjoy essays. I do. I like reading them, but I don't think I am an entire book worth of essays reader in one go. So by the time I got about 3/4 of the way through, I had mentally checked out of the book. Not because the essays aren't good. The essays are fantastic. It's just not my type of reading for, how many pages is this? 160 pages. I probably should have stopped after about 100 and picked up something else and gone with that. And then I would have enjoyed all of the essays as much as I enjoyed the first 100 pages worth of essays. So that's really just that's nothing bad about this book. It's more about knowing what type of reader you are. So I will know in the future that I can read about 100 pages worth of essays, and then maybe I should put it down for a couple weeks and read something else in between and then go back to the essays. I also, let's see, so I finished that. I'm still audiobooking A Dragonfly in Amber by Diana Gabaldon. And I think I'm about 2/3 of the way finished with that. It's going well. I am enjoying it. It's interesting to hear all of the takes on historical personages. It's interesting to hear all of the takes on historical people and their personalities. So I have a whole bunch of new books to talk about because I went to the library twice last week. Once with the children and once without. So when I went without the children, that was the first time last week. And I picked up, I think, a dozen things. 2 books for the kids, a book, a play-away view thing, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, for Gabriel, and then a play-away audio thing for myself, and 8 books. So first, the play-away audio. These are so cool. Does your library have them? You should check and see if your library has them. And I've known that they've been in existence for a while. Like, I theoretically knew about them, but I didn't actually know about them. So what it is a play-away, is a full audiobook in a little cartridge. So this is what it looks like. And here are the controls. You supply your own headphones, but there is a battery, which if the battery dies, you're responsible for replacing it. But there's a battery from whoever the last person had the book in here, and the entire story in this little tiny thing, which is perfect for doing chores and stuff. I've used it. I've listened to it while I was doing chores. So the one that I'm listening to right now is Dracula by Bram Stoker. And I don't know if I have read this book before. I don't think so. But I am, of course, familiar with the story. It sounds kind of familiar, the things that are going on, but if I did audiobook it, it would have been 3-ish years ago. So I'm listening to it on this play-away, which is perfect for, I'm working the late shift this week, and I'm at work after the store closes. I would never have headphones in. I would never have headphones in while there were customers in the store, but after everyone's gone and I'm doing my finish up thing, that's, 15, 20, 50 minutes where the store's closed, and I can listen to this audiobook, which is so much more convenient than having it on CDs and having to listen to it. I don't have Audible or anything, so I don't download audiobooks to any devices. So this is my excellent alternative. And of course I'm familiar with the story, so maybe that's why it seems a little bit deja vu-ish. I don't know. But this is not the first play-away that I rented from the library. This is the second one. The first one that I rented when I rented all the things was actually for a book that I have in my personal library. And this is, I would say it's my favorite juvenile fiction book. And it's well loved, as you can see. This is Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine, and this is probably my 4th copy book because I have loved it to death. This one is not in good shape either. You can see the spine is breaking. It's been taped. The front cover obviously is a mess. This top part of the spine has been damaged. I've read this book 20 times maybe, and lent this book out to all of my friends. I first read it when I was in 7th grade, and I loved it so much that I recommended that my 7th grade teacher order a copy for the classroom library. And then in 8th grade, I recommended it to my 8th grade teacher, my language arts teachers for 8th grade also. And I I made all of my best friends read it, and the first time that I read it, actually, I read only about a chapter a day, and there are 31 chapters in this book. So I only read about a chapter a day, and then every morning before school, my friends would gather around and I would tell them the story, like the synopsis of the chapter that I had read the night before, and they were all really, really interested in it, but they didn't want to read it because I was a big reader, but my friends were not so much. They liked reading, but a lot more casually than I did. So I would just tell them all of the excellent things that had happened. And Ella Enchanted, you can probably guess, is based off of Cinderella, kind of. But it also has elements from other fairy tales in it. There are giants and ogres, and there's a mention of a dragon, but it's not a prominent player. It's just in the castle's menagerie. There are gnomes and elves and different human languages. It's very good. I love this book so much. So I got the playaway because I saw it and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Even though I've read the book a bajillion times, I've never listened to it as an audiobook. So I started listening to it, and I did not right away love the narrator. It sounded like a young girl, so I was kind of annoyed about that. Not like Mara Young, but young teenager type voice, like kind of high pitched, kind of squeaky-ish. Not terrible, but didn't love it. But she grew on me after a while, and I just love this book so much. I would probably listen to most people read it. I started reading it to my kids when they were very, very tiny. And we got about halfway through the book before it just became too much of a hassle to try to read it to them. But I think this is going to be a book that I'm going to attempt to read with Mara. Not like right now, but soon, because I'm super excited about this. So another book that I've been reading this week is Tinkerbell and the Legend of the Never Beast. It's a chapter book, and it's based off of the Disney fairy Tinkerbell. There's a movie for this. I've seen the little screen on Netflix for it, but I haven't watched it. We were at the library, and Mara was coloring over by the series, the juvenile series spinner thingy set up for the books, and she saw this one and she was like, Mom, can I get that? And I was like, sure. I'm pretty much never going to tell my kids that they can't get a book from the library, not from a store because money, but from the library. I'm pretty much never going to tell them they can't get a book unless it's wildly inappropriate for them. But, this was in the kids area, even though it was not in the smaller kids area. And I just figured that we'd get it, it'd sit around the house for a week, I'd take it back. No, we have actually been reading this together, which is amazing. I mean, she's not reading it. She sits in my lap, and I read it to her, and we read a chapter at a time. So we've read 2 chapters, and there are, I don't know how many chapters there are, but there are only 78 pages, and we're on 13 or something like that. 14. We finished page 14. We don't read a lot in one go, but it's a chapter book with no pictures, and she just sits there and listens to it. That's kind of awesome. Gabriel is not to that point yet, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm hoping that we'll be continuing to read a chapter a day, Mara and I. So yeah, I'm reading this book, which is okay. It's, it's written for small people to read, so it's not amazing for me. But the storytelling is actually not that bad. There's a lot of it's very action driven so far, which is good. I also started Wither by Lauren DeStefano. And this is the first book in the Chemical Garden trilogy. It is a dystopian, post-apocalyptic, young adult trilogy. Shocker. Because when I go to find books for myself to read, I automatically go to the young adult section. I just do. It's my happy place for reading. Steve actually made fun of me. He was like, I just feel like the emotional maturity of those characters aren't very high. And, you know, that is true for some of the characters. Can't argue with that. But the storytelling in young adult is so much, not for every, I mean, this is a generalization, and you know, generalizations are always wrong because they don't cover everybody accurately. But this, the stories are so rich in detail compared to a lot of adult type books where it's, you know, it's the story, but there's not all the details. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Probably not. Anyway, started this, and I actually grabbed the entire trilogy off of the shelf because I liked the covers so much. I don't read anything about what the books are about before I start reading them. Like this inside flap, I looked at only because it says it's part of the trilogy, but it doesn't tell you what book it is in the trilogy. So I opened all of the covers and it didn't say. That was not helpful. So I looked it up online to figure out what the order was, or, you know, to figure out which the first one was. I am a little less than halfway through the first book, and I started it Thursday, maybe. Very much enjoying it. I think that I will probably start the second book immediately after finishing the first one. Maybe not, though. And if I start the second book and don't immediately get into it, it's fine because I have several other books in this lovely tote bag next to my desk full of library books that I can choose something else from. But I'm really, really enjoying it. Very, if you like post-apocalyptic, this one's a good one. Do you want to know the premise? So the science has evolved to the point where they have cured basically all diseases. Cancer doesn't exist, STDs don't happen, people don't get sick, or at least that's how it was for a generation. There was a generation where nobody got sick, but then they had children, and the children also do not get sick, but when people reach their full maturity, like growth-wise, which is around 20 for women and around 25 for men, you die. So women die when they're 20, like they don't make it to their 21st birthday, and men don't make it to their 26th. And that's how it is for everybody who is born to that generation of very healthy people. So there are, you know, a couple, that first generation, the healthy generation, are now into their 70s, and the you know, there's now a second and sometimes a third generation. So there are a ton of orphans because people start getting together when they're breeding age. So 13 is not a ridiculous bride age, and have babies and then die by the time their kid is 6 at the oldest. So there are a ton of orphans, tons of orphanages. The main character is Rhine, and she has a twin brother, Rowan, and their parents were first generation. So they didn't die and leave them when they were 6 or 7, but something happens to the parents, which I don't actually know exactly what happens to the parents, but they die when Rowan and Ryan are older-ish, like 14, I want to guess. And Ryan is 16 now, so she has 4 years to go before her death sentence. and the world has gone through World War III. So the U.S. is the only country that still exists. Everywhere else has been destroyed into uninhabitable islands, which I'm just going to guess that that's probably not correct. I mean, maybe, but I feel like later in the trilogy that's going to come back and people from the outside are going to come in and something. I feel like it's going to be a Deus Ex Machina sort of thing where, other countries come in. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. We'll see. Really, really enjoying it. I like it a lot. Highly recommend it. And the last thing that I have to talk to you about is what the title of the show is about. So letterboxing. I am super excited. Gabriel's school is very, very cool. And throughout the summer, they have a handful of activities, like family activity nights at the school. And the first one was this past Thursday. And the subject was letterboxing. I didn't know what that was. They sent home a flyer about it, like explaining about it a little bit, but not a lot of information. So we went, and what it is how do I explain? So what you do is you create a stamp, your own personal stamp. And what we did was we carved erasers. Just the pink pearl kind. It was very cool. The school supplied the supplies at no cost to us, which I thought was awesome. I mean, I would have paid for the supplies if they had been like, oh, there's a X amount of dollars fee. It would have been pretty cheap, probably $5. But we carved, Mara wanted her name, so I carved that for her. And I wrote it because when you make a stamp, you have to make it backwards from what you want. So we did that one for Mara. And then this is what Gabriel designed. It has a G, a triangle, and the F-looking thing is clearly a dragon. It's a dragon. So he did that. And then after the fact, when I did not have any carving tools, I decided I wanted a stamp for myself. So we didn't have another eraser, but I just turned over Gabriel's and I made a little bunny fish. So we made those stamps, and that was really awesome. And they gave us a little booklet, which unfortunately, this is our kit. So we have the stamps, the booklet, an ink pad, which the school provided. That's awesome. And some wet wipes, which I bought. And Mara opened the wet wipes and left them open in our kit. So this little booklet that the school gave us, it's just, a handful of sheets of paper that they stapled together. Very smart, because they don't want to invest a ton of money into things for families that the families might just throw away at the end of the day. So it's like 2 full sheets of paper cut into quarters, but it got wet. So this is what my bunny fish stamp looks like. And those are slightly blurry copies of what the kid stamps look like. And that's the date that we created it. I am really into this idea. So I've always kind of liked the idea of geocaching, and this is very similar. So now that, we started that, we made the stamps, and they gave us clues. You take clues and follow them to get, you can see all the extra splattiness from the stamps, because Mara really, really wants to do a lot of stamps at one time. And I want the notebook to look clean, like just have a stamp, because we're doing this for me. We're doing this because I like the idea. The kids are okay with it. They're like, oh yeah, treasure hunt, that's fun. But the notebook is for me. So you get clues, and this has one clue up here that the school gave us, and one clue down here that they also gave us. And we did the first clue that Thursday, but then I had to go to work. And so this is the first clue, which you can't really see. I mean, you can kind of see it's paw prints, stamps. So what you do is you follow these clues, and there is a a letterbox, which both of the two that we have found have been plastic baggies, like Ziploc style bags with rubber stamps in them. And one of them had a notebook, which we stamped our stamps into, but both of them have stamps that we stamped into our notebook. So this was the first one. And this is the second one, which is Abe Lincoln's hat. So obviously these are not very good anymore. Yesterday I bought a notebook for letterboxing, and Gabriel actually picked it out. I really like these notebooks. You can get them at Barnes & Noble, and they are made in Nepal. So it's right there. And there were 3 that I kind of liked. One was a pressed paper cover that was green, which obviously I liked because it was green. And then there was a woven linen one that was a natural color. And then this one, which is woven using leftover scraps of silk from a factory, like the parts that the factory doesn't use. So basically waste product to make this cover. And the pages are this hand pressed paper. It's made by a women's co-op. And the stamps don't stamp flat onto the notebook. All I did was put our stamps into the notebook. I haven't put in any of the information because I'm going to write like my email address and the kids' names and stuff. It's basically a treasure hunt. You go around to all these places. There are 2 main websites to find clues. So atlasquest.com and letterboxing.org. You find the clues, you go around, you take your notebook, you put stamps in it. And my plan is to, I think it'll be easier. I think this one is particularly rough, but this page feels much smoother. So my plan is to handwrite the clues into this notebook and then stamp the stamp on it, and also record any cool information and maybe put some pictures, because for instance, the second stamp that we got, this Abraham Lincoln stamp, you go to a park, you walk into the woods, and then you walk down a path and you turn, and there are directions for which way to turn and stuff. And then the direction is go until a large tree blocks your path. Find the bottom of the tree that is usually not seen. This is a great place for an animal or letterbox to hide. There was a tree that had fallen and its roots were up. Not all of the roots, obviously, not the entire root system, but where the tree would normally connect with the ground, that was standing upright, and it was huge. It was taller than I was at the base. Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was standing next to this fallen tree and the base was taller than I was. And it was just really, really cool because the letterbox was a Ziploc bag with only a stamp and a lighter. No notebook inside it. And I don't know what the lighter was for, but it was there. And the stamp and the bag was duct taped black. So it took us probably 5 minutes of looking in the crevices to find the letterbox. So I think I need to make sure that I have my cell phone with me charged full enough so I can use the flashlight feature so we can find these letterboxes. It's really cool. It's super, super fun. And yeah, I didn't take a picture when we went and got the stamp the first time, but I'm going to take a picture when we go back to re-get the stamp because our little notebook got damaged, and put it in here. I'm really excited about this. I hope the kids enjoy it as much as I've been enjoying it. We've only done 2, and there are a lot of them. Like, they're all over the place. There are 20,000 registered in the in North America. There are a ton right around us, and it's not just a summer activity because some are like inside restaurants. You go in and you say something and they give you their stamp, or libraries have them in little special boxes so the librarians know about them, but you have to follow the clues, and if you have trouble with the clues, the librarians will help you, but it's just really, really cool. So it's not just a warm weather activity. So we're going to do a lot of the outdoor ones while it's warm, but it's something that we can continue into fall and winter, which I'm super excited about. Okay, I've rambled on for a bajillion years. I hope you made something fantastic with your sticks and string, and I will see you next week. Bye!